The little boy's cry sliced through the five-star restaurant like shattered glass, sharp and impossible to ignore. Crystal glasses trembled. Conversations died mid-sentence. At the center of the elegant dining hall, beneath golden chandeliers and polished marble columns, a billionaire's son sat at a table covered in white linen, and wept as if his tiny heart were breaking in front of everyone. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of love, take a moment right now to like this video, share it, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel Ripple of Kindness. Because sometimes the smallest ripple changes everything. Ethan Cole was only 6 years old, but he carried a loneliness too heavy for his small shoulders. His father, Richard Cole, was a self-made billionaire known for building skyscrapers that pierced the clouds and companies that dominated headlines. His mother had passed away 2 years earlier after a sudden illness, leaving behind silence that no amount of money could fill. Since then, Ethan had stopped smiling the way children should. His laughter had faded into something fragile, something rare. That evening, Richard had decided to take Ethan to the city's most luxurious restaurant. He believed in solutions, expensive solutions. Private tutors, elite therapists, top pediatric specialists. He thought maybe a new environment, fine food, and a distraction would quiet the storm inside his son. He arrived dressed in a tailored suit, controlled and composed as always. Ethan wore a small blue shirt and neatly combed hair, looking like a miniature version of the powerful man beside him, except his eyes held confusion instead of confidence. The restaurant glowed with elegance. Soft piano music floated through the air. Waiters moved gracefully between tables, balancing silver trays with effortless precision. Guests whispered over candlelight, discussing stocks, vacations, and art auctions. It was a world of wealth and perfection, a world where crying did not belong. But Ethan began to tremble the moment he sat down. At first, it was only sniffles. His small hands clutched the edge of the table. His breathing quickened. Richard leaned forward, trying to calm him with promises of dessert, new toys, a weekend trip abroad. Nothing worked. Within seconds, Ethan's quiet distress exploded into uncontrollable sobs. Heads turned. A woman at a nearby table sighed impatiently. A businessman shook his head. The sound echoed painfully in the sophisticated hall. Richard felt something unfamiliar: embarrassment. He had negotiated billion-dollar deals without blinking, but he could not silence his own child. He tried reasoning. He tried sternness. He tried distraction. The crying only grew louder, rower, deeper, like a wound reopening. Then she stepped forward. Her name was Anna Morales, a waitress barely 23 years old. She wore a simple red uniform with a white apron tied neatly at her waist. Her hair was braided carefully, her posture straight but gentle. She had been watching from a distance, tray in hand, her eyes not filled with irritation like the others, but concern. Anna knew that sound. She had heard it before, not in restaurants but in her own childhood bedroom. She had lost her mother at 8 years old and remembered nights when no toy, no gift, no distraction could stop the ache. Only warmth could. She approached slowly, respectfully. Richard looked up, prepared for a complaint or a request to quiet the child. Instead, Anna's voice was soft but steady when she said the words that would change everything. She told him that his son did not need a distraction. He just needed a mom. The sentence landed like thunder. For a moment, Richard stiffened. No one spoke to him that way. No one dared suggest he was failing at something. But as Ethan continued to cry, reaching toward nothing, calling out in broken whispers for his mother, the truth became impossible to ignore. Richard had tried to replace grief with luxury. He had tried to substitute presence with presence, but children do not measure love in dollars. Anna gently asked permission with her eyes before kneeling beside Ethan's chair. She did not offer candy. She did not offer toys. She simply wrapped her arms around the trembling boy and held him. At first, Ethan resisted, surprised. Then something shifted. His sobs softened. His small fingers gripped her apron. His cries turned into exhausted hiccups. Within minutes, the storm began to calm. The restaurant fell silent, not out of annoyance this time, but awe. Richard watched, stunned. This young waitress, who earned in a month what he spent on a single bottle of wine, had done what he could not. She had given his son what money never could: human warmth. That night, Richard did something even more surprising. He did not retreat into pride. He asked Anna to sit with them for a moment. He asked about her life. She told him about growing up without her mother, about working double shifts to pay for college, about understanding the emptiness Ethan carried because she had lived it herself. Something inside Richard cracked. For the first time since his wife's death, he allowed himself to admit he was grieving too. He had buried himself in work to avoid the pain. He had avoided talking about Ethan's mother because it hurt too much. But in doing so, he had left his son alone in that pain. Over the next weeks, Richard began making changes. He reduced his meetings. He canceled unnecessary trips. He started therapy not just for Ethan but for himself. And he invited Anna to occasionally spend time with Ethan, not as an employee but as a trusted family friend. Slowly, laughter returned to their home. Months passed. Ethan began smiling again. He still missed his mother, that would never disappear, but the emptiness was no longer unbearable. He and his father began cooking together, visiting parks, talking about memories instead of avoiding them. Richard later funded a foundation in his late wife's name, dedicated to supporting single parents and children dealing with loss. But he often said the most valuable lesson he ever learned did not come from a boardroom. It came from a waitress who dared to speak truth. Because sometimes, the richest people are the poorest in what truly matters. And sometimes, healing begins with a simple sentence: he just needs a mom. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Ripple of Kindness. Your engagement helps spread stories that remind the world compassion still exists. Before this story ends, I have one special request for you. Comment the word kindness below if you believe love is more powerful than money. In a world obsessed with status and success, never forget that the smallest act of empathy can quiet the loudest cry. And sometimes, the greatest inheritance we can give a child is not wealth, but warmth.